Welcome back to the Rebel's Edge. And you've heard that there are just 7 stocks that move the market. Well, it's not quite true. There's only one stock that moves the market. And so far this year, it's responsible for 35% of the S&P 500 gain. You want to know what that stock is? Stay tuned for the Rebel's Edge. Bang!
It is official. Here we go. Rock and roll.
There we go. Winding up the week again, Pete. Because, folks, we do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday for the Rebel's Edge. And today's Thursday. That means it's the last day of the week that we do the Rebel's Edge. So thanks for joining us. Pete, do you want to take a wild guess what that one stock is?
Oh, it's got to be Apple. Wait. It's got to be Tesla. Well, wait.
Yeah,
I'm shocked.
There are $3 trillion stocks right now in the U.S.
Yep.
And Pete knows which one this is. It is the most expensive stock in the United States, in the world for that matter, of real markets, because somebody somewhere could come up with some wacky, oh, this is a $5 trillion valuation. Actual trading and real company, NVIDIA. $3.3 trillion, folks. Now, for those of you who sort of like Pete and I, see the market, see it open down, and then it rallies back, and you're going, what the heck is going on? All you got to do is look at the $3 trillion stocks. There are 3 of them, Microsoft, Apple, and NVIDIA. So you look at those 3, and then you say, okay, well, unless all 3 are down, in which case the S&P 500, I guarantee, is down, but that's not the case. NVIDIA rallies every day because it's a day that ends in day. And so it's up every day. And thus the S&P 500 is up because it's $3 trillion plus, and it's a market cap weighted index, Pete. So that's why.
It's made a move. It's been unbelievable. The influence that it's had, John, has been absolutely incredible. You're right. I mean, it's undeniable, and it is amazing the focus that we see there and the sheer volume of options. I mean, there are single strikes in NVIDIA over the last couple of days that have more volume than most of the rest of the markets do. So it gives you a little bit of an idea. And I'm talking about one strike, the at-the-money strike that expires tomorrow. That would probably be a great example to look at and see, wow, look at that one. That thing's got 380,000 contracts trading. I mean, it's unbelievable. It is unbelievable.
Truly it is. And, when you've got these $3 trillion monsters, 3.2 trillion or whatever, they are going to swing the rest of the market pretty aggressively. And indeed they have. All right, let's take a look, Pete, at Macro Minute. And for our Macro Minute today, I'm going to say producer prices unexpectedly declined in May. Now, that was led primarily by gasoline prices, which were softer in May. I think they'll go right back up, Pete. So I wouldn't exactly, again, put out the bunting for this one. But the markets are thinking more and more that maybe the Fed is only going to give us one rate cut this year, and we don't even know when. Maybe September, maybe further down, right?
Yeah. Just September, maybe December. I've heard people talk. I mean, who knows? I mean, the reality is I don't know how they could know that they even have 1 or 2 cuts. But anyway, that makes it all very interesting. I'm just going to hit on volumes real quick, John, for the Macro Minute. And what I mean by that is, how about the SPDR, the SPY? Now, you take a look at the volumes. 63 million was the average, right? But you get into the month of June and we suddenly had a drop off of 39 million average per day so far in the month of June. Well, we eclipsed that pretty good yesterday because we traded about 63 million shares yesterday. So it's an amazing thing to look at. It's absolutely incredible, those volumes. And I would even just add from an options perspective, it's incredible that we had 58 million contracts yesterday when it comes to just the options world. I mean, absolutely incredible that shows you that now in June that average is starting to slide up a little bit closer to the year to date, which is closer to 46, 47 million a day. But a big day yesterday, John.
Very big day. And obviously a lot of folks adjusting positions in Oracle because of that fabulous report that Larry Ellison and the firm put up, as well as many of those big $3 trillion babies that have made big moves this week, like Apple. Yeah. All right, let's take a look, Pete, at your favorite, Cocoa. It is up again today because, sort of like NVIDIA, it's a day that ends in day. It is up another, I think, 3% today, Pete. So once again, I'm going to say that is our fantastic future from my side down here in Puerto Rico. What do you got?
John, a lot of people want to talk about volatility. They have no idea what it is. A lot of them even dismiss that it even means anything to have the VIX and even talk about the VIX. And I always look at them and go, you're not going to have success, are you? But anyway, the reality is this. We talked about it yesterday, the very tight range. Well, over the last couple of days, take a look at how tight the range has really gotten, John. Last couple of trading days, we're talking 12 to maybe 1230, 1240, something like that, which is very, very interesting because when you take a look over at the S&P, and I just took a quick look, I see that it's down about 9 or 10 points. So in other words, it's doing absolutely nothing, which is why when you get down here and we're talking about the 12s, can it get lower? Sure, it could go lower, but there's only so much more room to the downside. You look at 52 weeks, you look at whatever you want right now. We are sitting basically on the lows for the VIX. Great opportunity for people to at least maybe hedge, John, some positions or put on some positions because suddenly those costs are going to be a lot less probably in most of the stocks.
Yeah, and that is always wise. You know, you and I talk about it a lot, Pete, that people get all excited about those after Christmas sales. And yet when either stocks or volatility goes on sale, everybody kind of puts up their hands and says, not me, I'm not going there. That strategy Pete just described is buying low and selling high. Yes. For those of you who understand. All right, let's go, Pete, with Chips Ahoy. Yeah. Because Broadcom is indeed a chip maker, folks. They reported better than expected quarterly profit and revenue. They also announced, sort of like their brethren, NVIDIA, a 10-for-1 stock split. So that's why this one was just exploding to the upside. And yeah, we had unusual activity in it. So when you take a look at this activity, you know, it was a $1,412 stock in the last week of May. Well, they were buying the 1450 calls. Today, the Broadcom or AVGO traded to 1665 or higher. And those calls, even though they were expensive at $40, went to whatever, Pete, 200 and some odd dollars. It's a 6x return, 6 times your money. So again, that's why we always say it's not an option to only trade stocks, because if you only trade stocks, you don't get 6x. No. Even if you owned NVIDIA all year, you don't get 6x. You're up about 300%. But if you want 6x, if you want 10x, like the hat says, you got to be trading options, and you're defining your risk when you enter, and you get a leveraged return. What do you think about these earnings at Broadcom, Pete?
Absolutely incredible. They absolutely crushed it. You look at the earnings themselves, you look at the revenue, absolute beats. You talked about the 10-to-1 split. That's going to be something pretty amazing. I wonder why they did that. I wonder what the plans are for the future. Anyway, they're probably taking a look at NVIDIA and figuring, you know what, maybe we can snuggle up next to these guys and maybe get into a few other areas of the market. They also raised the guidance, John. You and I talk about it all the time. Every time you look at earnings, that's the most important thing. What does it look like for an outlook? Well, their outlook looks pretty good at $51 billion of revenue that they're throwing out there in front of us right now. I would say this, but going back to those results from the options, John, it's funny how many people, and you and I used to sit on a desk with people that used to say, you know what, that's a hell of a move today. You know, you see this thing, it's up 7%. I don't think you get up for 7%. I know I don't wake up for 7%. That's why we do what we do in the derivatives markets, right? I mean, that's why we trade what we trade. By the way, for Broadcom, I'm looking at a PE of 31. That's really not that bad. Some people probably would say, well, it's pretty daggone steep. I don't really view it that way, especially if you look at the growth factor going forward and free cash flow of nearly $19 billion. I think there's a lot of different reasons why this is one of those names that doesn't get talked about a lot, but probably will start getting more and more chatter over the next couple of months, because you take a look at NVIDIA and what it's done. Broadcom's got a lot of things very similar. AI is definitely a big portion of what they're doing right now.
Yeah, like I say, chips ahoy. It's a fabulous report, no two ways about it. All right, let's take a look at Tesla, Pete. Why? Well, because Elon Musk apparently confirming that the shareholder resolutions, this goes back to 2018, folks. 2018, they granted him these basically incentive grants that if you can get the stock to here, you'll get this many options. If you get it to here, you'll get that many options, and so forth and so on. I think most of you are familiar with how that works. Well, a judge took that away 6 years after the fact. So these were granted in 2018. He met those milestones. The stock moved up, and the judge said it's just not right to give him $50 billion or $60 billion. Well, while that could be true, Judge, he met the goals that were set down by the board of directors. He didn't get to, he can suggest what they'd be, Pete, but he didn't get to write that whole package. The board of directors did. And he met those goals. How do you not pay him? It'd be like saying, well, yeah, Mahomes had all these incentives in his contract, but it's just not right that he makes $70 million in a single season because he met these, criteria. Of course it's excessive, but he met the criteria. So you've got to pay the man, right?
Pay the man. We've seen that in many movies. Pay the man his money. Anyway, no, you're right, John. I mean, it is amazing. And, the legal side of it got a little bit wonky. And then all of a sudden you've got guys that are actually stepping up, backing Leon like some of the guys that we're seeing. Barron out there, Ron Barron, one of the guys who's saying, you know what? Give the man his money. He deserved his money. Now, the stock is off the 52-week highs. Some people will say, well, he's taking his eye off the ball. He's got his brain over here as opposed to over here. If there's anybody who can cover the multiple stocks, I would say it would be Elon Musk. And I do think he's doing, an unbelievable job in all of his jobs. I would say this about Tesla. The problem is suddenly there was this whole pushback on the EV world and slowdown because essentially mostly cost being one of the bigger deals and people having to pay up more. So for a while, we've had a little bit of a pullback. We've talked about the inventories, everything else. I'm not overly worried about it. I think that they've got themselves positioned pretty well going forward. They're going to have to report a couple of different dates that are coming up, John. They've got the deliveries coming up for Q2 and the robo-taxi, which is coming up on August 8th. Those are some dates that I think people ought to put on their calendars because those could be very market-moving dates when the time comes for Tesla.
Agreed, Pete. And credit to you for putting them right in front of the viewers' noses right now. All right, let's talk about Mr. Branson's, one of his many companies, this one, Virgin Galactic. And Virgin Galactic Holdings trades under the symbol SPCE. Now, we all know what they do. They get you to the edge, really, of space. Is it space or is it just a really high flight? Again, if somebody wants to drop $250,000 to do this, Pete, more power to him. He is not in the league with Jeff Bezos, with Blue Origin, or with Elon Musk. And they've had a bunch of missteps, by the way, over at Virgin Galactic. That's why they're going to do a 1-for-20 reverse stock split. So instead of cutting, and having 10 times as many shares, like NVIDIA did, and now as Broadcom is going to do, at 1/10 the price. Instead, you're going to get a stock that goes from pennies to dollars because they're going to decrease the number of shares to get the price up so they can actually keep it on the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ. That's what's going on here, Pete.
Yeah, it's amazing, John. And you said pennies. You're right, because it's not trading at $1, folks. This is a 70-cent stock or thereabouts. It's somewhere in that. So, yeah. And, John, I don't know what they're waiting for. I mean, at this point, I would say they're being pigs because there's a 25% short interest in this stock. Why not cover that? I mean, you've done really well. It's gone from, call it, anywhere close to $5 or $6 all the way down under $1, and here we're at 70 cents. I think I'd be thinking about that. I'll tell you what, John, they have a cash burn that is awful. You look at the balance sheet, you kind of get scared a little bit, and you just wonder about it. The board did approve what they wanted in this 1-for-20 reverse split, just trying to basically throw themselves a life jacket, I guess, because the only one I can go back to and say, you know what, it kind of worked for them is maybe Bank of America when they did one of those reverse splits. But I don't know, John, that's usually a good sign that this is a company that's really struggling.
Yeah, and to your point, Pete, Citigroup and Bank of America, I believe, both did that, and they had to. People were just not interested in those stocks at those levels. And in the case of this one, you got to get back above $5, folks.
Yeah.
So just a 1-for-10 barely gets you back over $5. It would have you at $7.30 based on the 73 cents that it's trading for right now. And so they're doing a 20 for one so they can get the pig to 14. But it still will be a $302 million company, Pete, with, I've got to believe, very few bookings. And I don't know anybody, that wants to go up and go to the edge of space. I know fewer people that actually want to do those rides on those things for millions of dollars. But, it's capitalism, I guess. If somebody wants to pay up to go to the edge of space, let them. But this thing is not all that attractive to me. It's not like Elon's Pete SpaceX, where they can take riders, if you will, into space, but they also do a hell of a lot of things with the International Space Station, refurbing it and all that stuff and bringing up food and supplies and all that. This can't get anywhere near the International Space Station, Pete. And if it did, it would crush like a bug. So anyway, all right, let's do one more, Pete. Let's talk about Core Scientific, CORZ. Now, this one was interesting because apparently they are both a data center as well as a miner, a crypto or a digital asset miner. And they do that for their own account. They're a data center for others as well. And one of their associates, I guess, Pete, took a run at them 9 days ago at half the price that it is now. In other words, at $4 or $5, somebody tried to buy them out and they said, no, we're not selling there. Now it's a $2 billion stock. And, this was a big move again today on the heels of a couple of those big moves.
Yeah, it is interesting, John. I think that it's maybe not as bad of a bid as you and I are thinking. And the only reason I say that is these guys are drowning in debt. We talk about this type of thing all the time, but their amount of debt, their cash burn, absolutely awful. There's nothing. I was looking through the financials just going, all right, there's got to be something here, right? No, it's a complete mess. There's nothing there. They are in the right space, but they're not able to execute, apparently. But so you talked about it as a miner, as a data center, and the whole thing. But you would think that they would at least be in a much better position financially. Not necessarily perfect, not necessarily making money, like we'd like to see. But John, I went through it, all the way through just about every category I could look at, every metric I wanted to look at. And I was like, terrible, 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 terrible. I don't know why the bidder came in, quite frankly, except for the fact that it is the right place. Maybe it's just the wrong people running it right now.
Well, CORX, folks, keep an eye on it. It's made that big move, like I say, doubling in price in the last 9 days. And was that smart money that came in to buy them at 4.5 or 5, or was that dumb money just trying to cover up for something on their side, which happens from time to time? All right. Well, I thought you'd like this one, Pete. We have an interesting sports shot here with our friends Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. Wow. So I'll let you kind of react to this.
Well, first of all, nobody better than MVP
season. We met in a small town in Tennessee. I said, Tom, let's
And
get
Pete
together.
and I were down
Let's kind
at
of go
Grant
real under the
Cardone's event
radar.
with that
Don't
guy,
tell anybody
Peyton
we're coming
Manning.
in. Tom flies
He's a big
in
hoss.
Mr. Kraft's plane, big, huge plane. I'm like, that is not what I said. I said under the radar. That's against the salary cap too, by the way. We won't get into that. But
from
we
the
played
owner
golf together. We lifted weights together. We threw routes together with these high school receivers. We took their phones away.
Imagine?
We said, if you tell anybody,
What kind of an experience is that, John? To be standing there in high school,
we're going to kill all
with
of you.
maybe arguably two of the top 5 or 10 quarterbacks of all time.
Yep.
Peyton was absolutely a beast. He just didn't get too many opportunities to do what Tom did, which is get to a lot of Super Bowls. But, Peyton was as dangerous as any quarterback. He had that size. He had that arm. And neither one of them could run a 40. I mean, you and I could run backwards as fast as those guys could run a 40. But it just shows you how stupid it is to worry about somebody's 40 speed as a quarterback, unless they are just off the charts and can throw, like, some of the guys in the NFL right now. There's 2 or 3 of them that come to mind. But those guys were stiffs, but man, could they put the ball right there, right? Unbelievable.
Yeah. And, I think for years, Pete, people will be talking about the idea that Peyton won those Super Bowls on different teams, which is, a real mark of, his talent, because he was able to do it in Indianapolis, and then he wasn't ready to retire, but Indy wanted to move on with Luck. And he said, good luck, and went to Denver. And Andrew Luck was a great quarterback, good pick by them. It's kind of sad that he gave up on his career so early, Pete.
Injuries, man.
Worried about those injuries. But, when you're rich enough and you have, a great mind as well, because he's one of the smartest players ever measured by the Wonderlic, Pete. He was a Stanford quarterback. I'm talking about Andrew Luck, but Peyton Manning too. I think he was, pretty much right up there with the highest scores that they've tallied as well. So, but anyway, paying attention and wanting to live out your life rather than be limping around like poor old Dick Butkus or some of these other guys. I can understand. All right. What else you got, Pete?
All right. How about we do this? Now, how good is Boston really, John? And by the way, is Dallas really the right team? I know the Timberwolves got beat by them, but I think the Timberwolves had put up a better fight than what we're seeing out of Dallas right now. But that being said, it was a great game last night, actually, except for that the second quarter absolutely crushed them. I mean, they came out, the third quarter, 35-19, they outscored them. The second half, I should have said. But Dallas just didn't have it. The first half they did pretty well, and then all of a sudden, and Kyrie played much better than he did in the first couple of games. This game was down in Dallas. I just thought it would be fun, John, to feature somebody that you and I were talking about the other day, just so people know a little bit more about these guys, because they don't. But you look over at Boston and you say, all right, well, they've got Tatum and Brown. Yeah, that's true. But has anybody really looked into who this guy, Jaylen Brown, is? I mean, he is absolutely is off the charts, and it's such a great kind of weave from Andrew Luck being intelligent, Peyton Manning being intelligent. Then all of a sudden you take a look at this guy and you look at who he is and what he's done. He's from Georgia, went all the way out, to Cal Berkeley, one of our favorite schools on the planet. And the guy was just off the charts. I mean, his intellect is unbelievable, and I don't know how many people know it. I mean, he did a TED Talk over at MIT, John. He lectured at Harvard. He's the vice president of the Players Association in the NBA. By the way, he's the youngest in every one of the categories that I just read out, what he's done so far. Member of the chess club in Berkeley. I mean, how many basketball players are part of the chess club at Berkeley, John? I'm going to say very few, maybe one, and this is the one. So I just thought it would be cool just to highlight that these guys are most likely, I think it's all done. I think Dallas is they're just beaten. Maybe they get one game at home where they could put it together, and maybe get just enough points. But either way, you go back to Boston. They don't lose in Boston, John. They just don't. You talked about that the other day. They don't lose at home. And that's what they did all year. This is an unbelievable. And No Porzingis. He didn't even play. He can't play because he's hurt, and they still won the game. I mean, and I thought he was a critical piece that they kind of really needed, and maybe he is, but they didn't need him last night because that team is just rolling right now.
Yeah, they sure are, Pete. And now you got to think 3-0. You're not going to have anybody watching. Only the Boston fans and the Dallas fans. The rest of the country's like, nah, it's over, because for the most part it is. Maybe they eke out one win here, but they need to play like they played during their streaks at Dallas to have a shot to get back into this. And neither one of us, I think that they could win. Could they win 2 games here, Pete? 2 games would be tough because, again, after Friday night's game, they go back to Boston. And I don't think they can win in Boston. I really don't. So, yeah. And that player, Brown, hell of a kid. Great kid. He's got that $304 million contract.
He's his own agent too, John. He's his own agent. Yeah. He has guys helping him, helpers, but nobody who's stealing from him because, he learned it coming out of Cal. He goes, you know what? Pretty much the numbers just are there. So I'm just going to be my own agent. And then he's smart enough to figure out a lot of other things. Yeah, 300, that's not such a bad friggin' contract.
No, that's a pretty damn good contract. What about baseball?
All right, let's move on. The 2 best teams in baseball right now are, there's one team that you could maybe say the Phillies, but I'm going to go against that. I'm going to say the best 2 teams right now in baseball are the Yankees, John, and Baltimore. And here's some of the similarities. They're both in the American League East. The Yankees number 1, these guys are number 2 at Baltimore. They've both won 8 of the last 10. The Yankees so far this year have scored 356 runs. Baltimore's had 344 runs. They both lead the league with that number. They dominate at home. They dominate away. There's only one difference that I could find in these 2 teams. You know what it is?
Salary cap.
Payroll. Right now, the Yankees are paying $305 million in Baltimore, and we've talked about this before, John. Baltimore is paying $100 million. That's a third for the people who are at home that are not doing the numbers. They're number 25 out of 30, John. Number 25 out of 30 teams in MLB as far as payroll. Gives you a little bit of an idea that, yeah, everybody, this year everybody was like, well, it's just Yankees and Dodgers. Well, that's probably the way it'll end up potentially or whatever. But, stranger things can happen. I just look at this and just say, you know what? It just shows you that if you've got the right manager, the right players in the NFL, the right coach, the right players, you don't have to have the very biggest, best salaries and everything else. Sometimes it's just a matter of just having the right chemistry, and I think Baltimore is doing it because you look at their numbers, it's comparable in every single category, John, that I looked at. Every category, it was almost identical, except for payroll.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, Pete, it tells me that whoever the front office is, whoever the person is that's doing these signings and their farm system and all that, I want that guy or those guys or gals, but I suspect they're guys. I don't know that for sure, but I haven't seen a lot of gals running farm systems in Major League Baseball, but maybe there are some out there, and certainly a lot of ladies smart enough to be able to do that. But whoever it is, Pete, that is bringing these young players up, developing them, and then putting them on the field before they sign that $70 million contract or whatever, which would dwarf basically all that they've got. I think that's a big deal. Mm-hmm. So those would be the guys. That's like, Billy Beane and those guys, Pete. This is Moneyball. And so I'd be paying attention to who Baltimore has in those key positions, because it ain't just the coach. It's the general manager and it's the front office and farm system.
Yeah, and maybe the payroll will jump up a little bit because those guys deserve a little bit more money that are sitting up in those offices, picking these guys and signing them to the contracts they get, right? That's awesome.
True. Well, folks, as you know, we do the show Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Today's Thursday, so it's the last show of the week. We thank you guys for joining us. We'd remind you one last time that if you want to get a great book, go to itsnotanoption.com because you can learn strategies here. Grab your copy. Itsnotanoption.com. Pete and I will be back Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. I hope you all have a great weekend. Bang!
See ya.